Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Numerics with Nadia. In today's video, we're going to go over how to find the percentage of a number. So this is usually a topic that a lot of students struggle with trying to understand. So we're going to go through our lesson plan and try to figure this out. So in our lesson today, we are going to learn how to compute the percentage of a number, right? And we're going to do this using two methods. So you can use whichever method you prefer or makes more sense to you. The first method is going to be using equivalent fractions, and we'll go through examples to figure out what that means in a little bit. And the second method is going to be using a decimal multiplier. So what we're going to do, we're going to introduce and define each of these two methods. We'll do a basic example or two for each, and then we'll get into our practice section like we always do, and you guys can use either method to solve it. I want you guys to pause the video when we get to that practice section to solve it on your own. I'm gonna do both methods, but you can use whichever method makes more sense to you. All right, you guys, let's get into method one. So as we've said, method one is using equivalent fractions. And the question we're gonna have for both methods is gonna be the same. The question is, what is 35% of 60? So we're going to decode this question using our first methodology. When we see that 35%, since we're using the using equivalent fractions method, we're going to change that 35% into a fraction. And we know that 35% is just 35 over 100, right? If you guys need a refresher on that, please feel free to check out my fractions playlist. What we're going to do now is we're going to reduce our fraction. We know that 5 goes into both 35 and 100, so if we divide by 5 top and bottom, we know 35 divided by 5 gives us 7, 100 divided by 5 gives us 20. So now we've decoded, right? Our 35% is now a fraction and it's now reduced. So we have this 7 over 20. Let's look back at our question. It says, what is 35% of 60? We know that of gets decoded to multiplication. We go through these words in my last video, the algebraic equations introduction. So now we're going to do 7 over 20 times 60. And since we're multiplying a fraction by a whole number, we'll go ahead and put that 60 over 1 so we can multiply across. Let's cross cancel first though. That 60 and that 20, we know that they both are divisible by 20. So let's divide by 20 for both of them. 20 divided by 20 gives us 1, 60 divided by 20 gives us 3. So now for our numerator, we have 7 times 3 up top and then just 1 on the bottom. We know that 7 times 3 gives us 21. So that would be the answer using the first method for the question. Now let's get into our second method. For method 2, we will be using a decimal multiplier, right? So same question as before. The question is, what is 35% of 60? But we're just going to approach it in a different way because this time we're using a decimal multiplier. So this time when we see the 35%, we are going to convert it into a decimal. So we know that 35% as a decimal would just be 0.35, right? And if you haven't watched my decimal video, please check out the decimal playlist. I do a lot of practice there. So we know that 35% is 0.35. We'll go back to the question of means to multiply, right? So we'll do 0.35 times 60. The 0.35 has 2 decimal places. So we're going to multiply the 60 and the 35 like normal, and then add in the 2 decimal places. When we do 60 times 35, we know 5 times 0 is 0, right? 5 times 6 is 30. When we go to our second row, we add in a 0. 3 times 0 is 0, and then 3 times 6 is 18. When we go through and add this up, we get 2100, but our 0.35 had 2 decimal places, right? So we're going to go in and we're going to add those 2 decimal places back in. And when we do that, we get 21. And 21 is the same answer we got using our first method as well. So either method works, whichever one you guys prefer or is more straightforward to you. All right, you guys, let's get into our practice problems now. As a reminder, I want you guys to use whichever method you guys prefer to solve these questions. There's only going to be 3 here because I'm going to explain it using both methods, but feel free to do additional practice on your own as well. The 3 problems we're going to do are as follows. For number 1, we have 55% of 40. For number 2, we have 15% of 80. And then for number 3, we have 30% of 90. So I want you guys to pause the video here, try them on your own. Just give it your best effort. If you are confused, we will go over all of them using both methods, but pause it here and try it on your own. And now we will get into solving these. So for number 1, we had 55% of 40. And like I mentioned, we're going to go through this using both methods. For method 1, we're looking at that 55%. We're going to convert the 55% into a fraction for method 1, right? So 55% is the same as 55 over 100, and I can reduce by 5 here, top and bottom, and when I do that, I get 11 over 20. We know that of means to multiply, so we will do 11 over 20 times 40. And that 40 is a whole number, so we'll put it over 1 so we can multiply across. We can cross cancel the 40 and the 20. We can divide both of them by 20 here. And when we do that, we get 1 for the new denominator, 2 for the new numerator. And we have 11 times 2 over 1. 11 times 2 we know is 22. So 22 is our answer for method 1. Now we'll go into method 2. Instead of converting it into a fraction here, we're going to convert that 55% into a decimal, and we get 0.55. 0.55 times 40 is what we're going to do, and our 0.55 has 2 decimal places, so we're going to put that in later. We're going to multiply 40 times 55, and when we do that, and when we add down, we end up getting 2200 again. And here we have to put those 2 decimal places back in. And when we do that, we get 22 for method 2 as well. You'll always get the same answer if we do it correctly. Now we'll move on to number 2. For number 2, we had 15% of 80. I'm going to go through here and do the same setup with both of our methods. And here again, 15%, that's what we're going to be converting differently. For method 1, 15%, we're going to convert that into a fraction. We know that 15% is the same as 15 over 100, and we are able to reduce by 5 top and bottom. When we reduce by 5, we get 3 over 20, and now we'll look back at our problem. We'll do 3 over 20 of means to multiply, right? So 3 over 20 times 80. We'll put that 80 over 1. We're able to cross cancel here, the 80 and the 20. We can divide both of them by 20. When I do that, I get 4 and 1. So we have 3 times 4 over 1, and 3 times 4 we know is 12. So we got 12 for method 1. Now we'll move on to method 2. Here we're going to change the 15% into a decimal. 15% is the same as 0.15, and we will do 0.15 times 80. Our 0.15 has 2 decimal places, so we'll do 80 times 15, and then we'll put in our decimals at the end. When we do 80 times 15, we end up getting 1200 when we add down, and that 1200 we'll go through and put our decimal place back in, so we'll move 2 units, and we get 12 as our answer when we do method 2 as well. And now we'll move on to our last practice problem for today. For number 3, we have 30% of 90. Let's do the setup with both methods side by side one last time. For method 1, we're going to convert that 30% into a fraction, right? So 30% is the same as 30 over 100, and we can reduce our fraction if we divide top and bottom by 10. So when we divide top and bottom by 10, we end up getting 3/10. Now we'll do 3/10 times 90, right? Because of means to multiply. So 3/10 times 90, we'll put the 90 over 1 so we can multiply across. And we can cross cancel the 90 and the 10 here. We can divide both of those by 10 to simplify that. And when we do that, we end up getting 3 times 9 over 1. And we know that 3 times 9 is just 27, right? So we get 27 as our answer for method 1. Now we'll move on to method 2. Same thing. We're going to change that 30% into a decimal. So we get 0.3, and we'll do 0.3 times 90. When we look at our 0.3, it only has one decimal place. So we'll do 90 times 3. When we do that, we get 270. Then I'll put in my decimal place. So we get 27 as our answer for number 3. That is all the practice problems we're going to do for today. Please let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do another walkthrough video with more examples. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like it if you did, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with a friend who might find this video helpful. See you guys next time.